welcome to the Naked Insane podcast, where vulnerability and authenticity meets growth and healing. Today, I am with Danielle, and we are going to be hearing Danielle's story on breaking labeling yourself as a victim, moving forward from that, and also the power of changing your mindset. Danielle, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So great to have you today. So, Danielle, you just shared something that was just very interesting to me, and I just want to put it out there if you don't mind. Did
Okay.
you say you ran a 10K today?
So actually, I do it every Sunday. Well, most Sundays.
Oh, yeah.
I get up because I work out a lot. I'm really into health and fitness. And so I just decided to get up this morning, and I usually go either hike up Stone Mountain or walk around Stone Mountain. And I said, you know what, you're gonna do a 10K today. I actually signed up for the American Cancer Society. They're having a challenge right now. And to run, I can't remember what the number of miles is, but for the month of June to raise funds for cancer research. And because, it's affected my life. My dad has cancer. So I said, let me get up. I'm going to run for my daddy this morning.
Oh, wonderful. I love that. Well, I can imagine that being able to do that. Number one, do it because it's beneficial for your health, but also because you're doing a great cause for your dad. That must feel very fulfilling to you.
It does. It does. I came to running late in life, but I enjoy it. So I said, I'm going to do it as long as I can. Knees hurting, back hurting, but we're going to keep doing it.
Beautiful. And how is your dad doing? You said he has cancer.
He's doing well. When diagnosed last year, they gave us like 4 to 6 month, life expectancy, and he made a year in April, and he's doing well. So
I love to hear that. My dad was also diagnosed with cancer. He passed away last July. And so we're coming up on his the anniversary of his passing. So it's always good to hear that people are able to rise above and beat that fight, because
absolutely.
That is a tough battle to endure for sure. Okay, Danielle, if someone wanted to just get the highlights of who Danielle is as a person, what would you say to them?
I think I would probably tell them, I feel like if I can do something, anybody can do it, because there was a long period of my life. I was the hot mess express. So if I can turn my life around, anybody can.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say like, oh, I had it rougher than anybody else or anything like that. I think we all have challenges. We all have things we have to push through and grow through. So I'm not special in that regard, but I think the way I handled it was terrible at times. And I have finally grown into a space where I can handle it with a little bit of growth, a little bit of grace, and a little bit of maturity. So if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Tell me about your journey. Like, what would you say you had to grow through?
Well, so I'm actually not from Atlanta. I am from the Midwest. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where it's cold for no reason.
I know. Listen, I lived in Madison for 10 years.
Okay, so you understand,
I do. And I worked in Milwaukee for about a couple years. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Too cold. So I was born and raised there. I am the youngest of 3. I guess for the most part had what would be considered like a normal upbringing. But I encountered a lot of challenges. There was some abuse that went on when I was younger. Not like abuse like you would think of like the typical like, oh, child abuse, It was nothing like that. It was more times than not where I did something I probably should have gotten in trouble for, but it was the punishment far would exceed the crime. So it would be like, to give you an example, how kids, you talking crazy to your parents, they made you mad, you smarting off in the back of the car when you ain't got no business saying nothing. Instead of getting, I'm gonna put you on punishment, or whatever, you might get popped or something like that. I would get drop kicked. So it was that.
Yeah.
So it was definitely some challenges, and that definitely affected me. It affected me, and I didn't even realize it was affecting me. until I got much older.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so just some challenges in that. Some of the relationships I chose, the people who I kept around me, it was all of it had been just, and I'm not going to say it was terrible. Okay, it was terrible decision making in a lot of cases.
Mm-hmm.
But you're young. You make bad
Mm-hmm.
decisions when you're young because you're young. You don't know no better, and you're growing and you're learning.
Right.
But I think my journey, it took me to a place where I started to see myself as everybody else's victim. Like everybody's doing what they want to do, and I just get dragged along for the ride, and I have to endure this because of this person. I got to endure this because of this person. I really grew up not feeling like I had a whole lot of power. And I really,
Mm-hmm.
it took me well into my 40s before
Mm-hmm.
maybe late 30s, early 40s, to really come into my own power and my own,
Mm-hmm.
like, you don't have to take this. You don't have to
Mm-hmm.
let other people just kind of run all over you, whatever.
Right.
But it was definitely challenging, and I had some terrible, terrible coping mechanisms of how to deal with that. And I can't even tell you what moment where it just something like a
Mm-hmm.
light bulb came on and it snapped. And I was like, this ain't my life. And it don't have to be my
Mm.
life.
Can we go back when you were talking about, you said that I experienced what you wouldn't say would be the typical form of abuse. And you gave the description of like, okay, I would do this, but would go far exceed, what the punishment should be for that type of misbehavior.
Mhm.
And so, when were you at a point where you realized that, man, this is actually abuse? Like, how old were you when you came to that realization that, you were being abused physically?
Um, I was a teenager. I probably would say like early college, like maybe like my freshman, sophomore year in college. When you go to college, you get exposed to different people who
Yeah.
live different types of lives. And, they're just, I think I grew up in that typical where everybody was like a cookie cutter. Everybody kind of came from the same, environment and background. Everybody's
Mm-hmm.
parents came from the same environment and background. And you
Mm-hmm.
go to college and you meet different people, and you
Mm-hmm.
start talking and you share your experiences, and they would be looking at me like, girl, what happened to
Yeah.
you? Like, that's not normal. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's when I started to realize this isn't normal.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's unfortunate, right? Because with abuse, when that happens, if you're in an environment or in a community where that type of stuff is normal, you don't really realize until later on in life where people started to call that out. Yeah.
And the thing is, I don't know what was going on in anybody else's house, but I know, like, it was also, at least from my experience, it could have been going on in my friends growing up. I have no idea because it was not something we talked about. So
Mm-hmm.
you didn't go to school and, what happened? How'd you get this black eye? Oh, I was playing baseball. And because you didn't tell the
Mm-hmm.
truth. You didn't tell
Yeah.
what really happened.
Right. And so was your household like, you better not be talking about what goes on in this house? Right. Okay. Because I mean,
What goes on in this
that's,
house stays in this house.
yes. If you say something, you gonna get punished, and don't be telling them people my business.
Went through all that. And because that was the norm for me. I mean, now it wasn't like no abusive situation, but like I raised my own daughter, like, hey, don't go back over your grandparents' house
Yeah.
hollering about what then happened over here. And it wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
really be anything. It would be like, like, oh, I had a boyfriend over or something like that, but don't you go back on
Mm-hmm.
telling my business, that type
Mm-hmm.
of thing. So I think that it was just the norm. You don't go back and tell
Right.
nobody what happened over here.
Right. Right. We have been taught to live in secrecy in a way. You still kind of have that theme, like, okay, don't go off telling whoever
Right.
what's going on in this house. And
Mm-hmm.
so they start to then pass down the
Yep.
secrecy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you don't realize that this is probably not a good look until later in
Mhm.
life. So
And so in college, when you heard your friends or, people around you say like, girl, that's not normal.
I had to process it. I had to think
Yeah.
about it and I had to process it. And it turned into about 20 years of anger all the time, all the time. I mean, getting mad at stuff that you shouldn't even really be mad about. I mean, I would think about something, this back in 1982, you did da, 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 and now I'm mad about it 20 years later. I mean, it was just a lot of anger.
Who was the anger towards?
Any and everybody. It was anger at my parents, anger at my friends, anger at my boyfriend who was this boyfriend, because I haven't had a lot of boyfriends, but the person I was with, who I spent the majority of my life with, anger at him. It was just walking around angry at everybody and then feeling like I was everybody's victim. Like everybody did what they wanted to do. Everybody just ran all over me. And now I'm the one that's got to deal with the repercussions. And I'm the one that deal with the fallout. And they didn't like bopped on and they off to this and they off to that. And then I'm the one that's sitting here with all this trauma that I'm trying to process because of other people. So it was just a lot of anger for a lot of years.
So you were holding on to those past experiences.
Yeah, I was angry all the time, and then I developed some unhealthy coping mechanisms to deal with that. Because who wants to stay in that constant state of, they talk about that fight or flight. You should. I was in constant fight. I would fight with anybody. You looked at me too long, and I was ready to jump back. Like I was just mad all the time. And then I started developing some unhealthy coping mechanisms with alcohol, dealing with that. I think that was back in the, I don't know, maybe early 90s, where it was almost like this little phenomenon. People would crack jokes about like women who would get like wine drunk. Well, that's what I would do. I would go get that big old supersized bottle of wine, and that was my coping mechanism.
Were you still in Wisconsin during this time?
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't know for you, but for me, the culture in Wisconsin, a lot of it is all around like drinking, alcohol. You go out, you socialize. Any event, they're going to have alcohol there.
Yep.
And they're going to be expecting you to drink. Is that what you experienced?
Yes, but see, I was never the social drinker. Like I was the one who'd be like, I'm gonna stay sober because somebody got to get us home. So when I would go out, I was almost the designated, not always the designated driver, but I was the one who would dial it way, way back. I drank at home. Because I'm like, when I'm at home, I don't have to worry about having to go drive. I don't have to worry about this. I don't have to worry about that. And it was literally, I sat at home and basically drowned in my own misery. But when I was out, I was social. I was fun. I was not the party girl who would go out and be up on somebody's table or nothing like that.
So how did the unhealthy coping mechanism of drinking, how did that start to develop for you? Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, it was feeling like a victim, feeling like I had no power, feeling like there was all these things that were wrong. Just there was nothing right at that time. I was like, I don't like, I don't like my job. I'm unhappy in my relationship. I'm not getting along with my family. I'm angry at something in the house is broken and needs to be fixed, and I don't have the money to fix it. Just you name it. Just mad and upset, but it was feeling like that powerlessness, like I have no control over any of this stuff that's happening to me. And so, but I have control over this. So this is what I'm going to go do.
So that was your point of control. You can control opening the bottle. You control how much you drank. You can control, how tipsy you got or didn't get. That was all at your control.
I don't think there was any one point where I noticed it. I think it was just like gradually, because a lot of it too was I couldn't get along with anybody. I was mad at everybody. I didn't have anything nice or positive to say to anybody or about anybody. And I think it was just very gradual. And it got to the point where I was like, I guess this is just my personality at this point. So it wasn't like I didn't really have an epiphany or an aha moment of, oh, you need to slow down on this, or, oh, might be too much. It just really gradually just turned into my personality. I think when I was like, if there was any epiphany of this might be too much and this might be, is when it started negatively affecting my relationship with my daughter. That I think that's when there was, but at that point, I felt like I was so deep in that depression. And what part of it too was I was severely depressed and didn't know it until years later when I finally went to a doctor and got a diagnosis, and she was looking at me and she was like I was telling her everything. And I'm like, well, this is going on and this happened to me and this happened to me and da, da. And my doctor looked at me and she said, how are you still standing? And then she was like, you probably have spent the majority of your life in a severe state of depression, but because it was normalized, you didn't even realize it. And so I think that's when I was like, well, this probably.
How did you respond to that when she said that?
At first I was like, yeah, I can see. And I said, but everybody gets depressed sometimes, everybody gets down, we all get the blues. I kind of dismissed it a little bit, but then the more we talked and the more, it started, I guess I became receptive to what she was saying. It started to sink in, and she started really kind of tying things for me. This happened and you chose to do this. That is not the reaction of a normal, like, functional person. That is the reaction of somebody who is depressed when you did, whatever it may have been, whatever the scenario was. And then I was like, well, then I guess that's just my personality. I guess I'm just depressed. And she was just like, well, you claim that over your life if you want to, but you don't have to. And I think that's when things started to turn for me a little bit. Because I was like, I don't have to claim that over my life.
Right. So it almost sounds like you decided and you chose to take control or demonstrate control in a different way, because you were allowing yourself to have control by drinking. But it sounds like once your doctor gave you that phrase, like, hey, you don't have to claim that over your life, you start to look at it in a different light. And was that the turning point for you to start doing the work on yourself and trying to seek help for the depression?
It was, but there was a lot of, like, backsliding during that time period. It would be like, take 2 steps forward, take 10 steps back. Take 2 steps forward, take 3 steps back. Things really started to change, honestly, so my daughter left and she went to college. And she went to college out of state. And so it was just me. So I didn't have a buffer of somebody to, like, kind of, not where I didn't have to deal with my stuff because there's somebody here who I have to deal with and manage, and got to take her here and got to take her here and get her to this and get her to that. And I didn't have all my busy work was gone. It went off to Ohio.
So you had to sit with yourself.
So I had to sit with myself. And it was definitely, in the beginning, it was very performative. Like, I'm doing this because I feel like I have to. I'm doing this because this is probably what I should be doing. Not necessarily what I want to be doing, but what I should be doing. I think it really was not, it really was not until even later in life, even though I knew I should be doing this, and things started to get better. Things definitely started to change. I started to grow. I started to change. But, I had them habits for a long time. I had that habit for almost 20 years. And so I was not, so let me just, I want to preface this and say, like, I don't want anybody to misunderstand, because I know there are some people out there who are just real alcoholics. That was not my situation. I was not the person who woke up and had to start drinking, had to drink all throughout the day. There were times I was like, I don't feel like drinking, and would go weeks, months without it. I used it as a crutch when life got to be too much and I had to numb myself out because I can't deal with this anymore. Well, then I had nothing to numb out for anymore because she was gone to college. She was doing okay. I still got all this stuff I'm mad at, but who am I hurting? I'm mad at people that don't even know I'm mad at them. So things started to get better. Slowly started to get better. Of course, they don't stay better. They got worse at various points in life. I think it's when I got to the worst of the worst, where I hit the absolute rock bottom. And that was about almost 2 years ago, where I hit the absolute bottom of the bottom, when things really start to flip and change.
Are you able to share with us what your rock bottom moment was and how you got there and how you were able to navigate through that?
Right when the pandemic started, you know, everybody was buying houses I had been trying to move to Florida. Was running down to Florida like every 3 months, getting outbid on houses, you know, trying so hard. I wanted to go to Florida so bad, and it just wasn't happening. And then people started paying those ridiculous prices for houses. Remember when people were like, a house that was worth like $80,000 and they was paying like $300 for it. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, let me get in on that. So I sold my house, but I didn't really have anywhere to go. And so I was, I reached out, called my mom, and I was like, hey, can I move into the basement till I figure out where I'm going? She said, sure. So I moved into my mom's basement. I stayed there for about a year. Didn't know where I was going, didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I had to, whatever. I was kind of waiting for like God to come down and say, this is where you should go, my child, you know, that type of thing. And it wasn't happening. And so I was like, what am I supposed to do? And then I reconnected with somebody who I went to school with as a child. And we developed a relationship, and he was like, you know, why don't you come on, move down to Atlanta and we try this thing. So I said, okay. And it was so easy for me to move down here. Like I had been running back and forth to Florida like a nut for like 2 years, couldn't find nowhere to stay, couldn't afford anywhere to stay. Came down here the very first time I had ever stepped foot in this state. I found some place to live, rented a house, and was ready to go. So I was like, this is where God is telling me to be, because this was too easy. This was, I was trying to get to Florida and it was just hard. This was so easy. And I met this man and I think I'm in love and I was the whole 9 yards. And so I moved down to Atlanta and I was here 8 months and the bottom fell out and the relationship ended. And I was the first time I was like, I'm out here without a safety net and I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I could either fall back into old patterns or I can do something different. I could try something different. You can not see yourself as like, oh, you the victim. This man did this to you. And nope, because you chose, you listened to him. You believed him. You chose this. So you ain't nobody's victim. You made a bad decision. And now you can flip the script. Or you can sit here and wallow in it. And it's your choice. So I made a choice not to sit around and I mean, I had it was some bad times. I mean, at one point, my best friend flew down here because she was like, I got to put my eyes on you because, girl, because my friends, they had never seen me care for somebody in that manner. So like the meltdown that happened, they were like, what is this? Like, who is this? Like, they had never seen me care to somebody to that degree. So they were all a little worried.
What happened in that moment that caused them to be so concerned about you? Was it your demeanor? Was it what you went through in the relationship?
It was all of it, but I think what caused the most concern was that I didn't bounce back fast from that at all. And they were used to me being, okay, you may be down for like a couple of weeks, maybe a month, maybe a couple of months. But this went on and on and on. And that's when my friends and family started to get concerned because they were like, she's not bouncing back. And she usually would have bounced back by now. So he was the first relationship that I had ever had as an adult that I chose as an adult. Not like, you know, when my other relationships, like I was young, I was a kid, I was a teenager, you know, you just kind of fall into them and it's like, oh, okay, you know, okay, we're happy. This is the first thing I intentionally chose. And so to have something that I intentionally chose go so horribly awry, I couldn't handle it. It's like it did not compute. Because when things fell apart with other relationships, because I was a kid and I didn't go into them with any intention or any type of purpose or anything, I just stumbled into it and fell in it and we'll see what happens. This was totally the opposite. And so I didn't handle that well at all.
And when this relationship went awry, did you see yourself as a victim in this relationship or were you a victim in this relationship?
At that time, yes, absolutely. I felt like I was the victim of circumstance. I was the victim of other people's mess. I was the victim of this was everybody's fault but mine.
Mm-hmm.
Now, then once I calmed down and got some clarity, no, it takes two people. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just him. There were things I did wrong. There were things he did wrong. There was a lack of communication. It was just all types of stuff. But
Yeah.
in that initial, I absolutely felt like a victim because I felt like I had lost myself in that relationship. I didn't know who I was anymore.
Mm.
I looked in the mirror and didn't even recognize the person who was looking back at me anymore in that relationship. So yeah, there was definitely a period of time where I felt like somebody's victim again. But now, no, I don't feel like that anymore.
Walk us through how you were able to change your mindset from seeing yourself as a victim, and how were you able to heal from that relationship?
So it really was, my brother was a big help. My brother would send me YouTube videos of his pastor in Milwaukee. And he
Mhm.
just listen to this, watch this sermon. You know, he's like, you going through this for a reason. This is not for no reason. You gonna come out of this stronger. You gonna be able to help somebody. You gonna be able to talk somebody through who's going through the same thing. He would send me these videos and I would kind of half watch them and be like, mm-hmm. Um, and but over time, they just kind of started to resonate. And then I was like, get out your feelings and think. Like,
Mhm.
that was the first thing I really had to get out of my feelings and think. Because I could walk around, I can spend the rest of my life walking around. You did this to me. You did this to me. You ruined this. You destroyed this. But that
Mhm.
would be me staying where I started.
Yeah.
I don't want to be one of those people that's 70 years old and with that same mindset, because then I just wasted 50 years of my life. So
Yes.
I had to come out of that. Um, and I had to realize that this mindset does not do anything for me. It don't help me. It hurts me more than anything. And then I had to take a hard, long look in the mirror and say, you are not a victim. There may have been cases where, yes, because I think everybody has stuff done to them that, yeah, I didn't cause this. I didn't do this. But you can
Mhm.
either choose to adopt that mentality of you're somebody's victim, or
Mhm.
you can say, you know what? Bad things happen and I can bounce back from them. I used to sit on the
Mhm.
phone with my friend and tell her all the time, I guess I'm just too old. My bounce back game ain't that strong no more. I'm too old for it. And she would be like, girl,
Mhm.
really? I had to break the way I thought. And part of it was distancing myself from people who I know they're not going to do nothing but hurt me. And
Mm.
I might want them in my life and I might love this person, but I'm going to have to love you from a distance. And what I had to learn to do is you stop pledging allegiance to the people and to patterns and to mindsets that do not serve you, or you going to be somebody's victim all your life.
Woo, preach. Say that. Oh, so, and I know it's like it's one thing to have that mentality and say that, but then was it ever hard for you to then, once you realized that, was it ever difficult for you to keep your distance from people who were not serving you, to not go back to those thought patterns that you had that wasn't serving you?
It was easier with some and harder for others. You know,
Yeah.
it was, the some people that it was easier for, where it was like, I don't want to ever call anybody a lost cause, but when
Hmm.
people show you who they are, believe them. And they had shown me
Hmm.
over and over and over, and I kept trying to see some good that really probably wasn't there.
Hmm.
It was easier to walk away from those relationships versus the ones who I still saw some good in this person. Or that was even harder, is I saw somebody who might have acted a certain way that really was not healthy for me, but I could
Hmm.
pinpoint and I knew that they were acting out of pain. And because I was very sympathetic to it. And I had to learn that you can't let your sympathy hold you in this space, because you can't want And I think I say all the time, that's my toxic trait. I want better for people than they want for themselves. And that is going to hold you in this victimhood, in this that space of being somebody's victim forever. If they don't want it, you can't force it. And you keep barking in their ear about you should do this. All I'm doing is probably getting on their nerves and driving myself crazy.
Did you ever feel a part of your sympathy was connected to identifying yourself or seeing yourself in those people?
Yes, absolutely. 100%. There was a lot of people I was connected to that my family and my friends were like, oh, you should get rid of that person. This person ain't no good. They this, that. But because I saw that, I didn't see them as like, they're just this bad person. This person is acting out of pain. I've done it. I've done some horrible things because I was in pain. I wasn't trying to hurt nobody, but I was hurt. Hurt, what they say, hurt people hurt people. And so that's what I saw. I saw their hurt. I saw their pain. I saw them acting out, and I understood it, and I identified with it. And so that would hold me, and I wouldn't want to, I didn't want to leave them because I knew that they're doing this out, they're acting this way out of some source of hurt or some type of unresolved issue that they won't deal with or whatever it may be.
You're at a point now where you're saying, like, you know what? I'm taking the control back. I have to let go of the mindset that I have, the type of behaviors that I go back to as a crutch. I even have to cut some people out of my life. So at that point, how were you able to then move forward? Because, like you said, even though like you would identify with some people and it'd be harder to cut them out of your life, but how were you able to build the momentum and stay more consistent with putting your foot down and saying, okay, I need to look out for me. I need to stay on my path. I have to let these people go. I have to let this mindset go.
I prayed, nothing else. I prayed. I mean, got down on my knees and screamed, hollered, cried, everything. And literally, there was a period of time where I was like, my tear duct should be dry at this point, because I think there was a period of time I literally cried every single day and just prayed and prayed and prayed. And that's the only thing that really got me through it. I said, I cannot just sit here and go through the motions. I don't want to be one of these people, because we all know people like that who just go through the motions. They just kind of out here in life. They're aimless, purposeless. They just they just out here and can't articulate what they're doing or why they're doing what they're doing. And I did not want to be one of those people. And I had to stop aligning myself with people that is their mindset. And so even though there were some people who I did not want to leave at all, I didn't want them out of my life. I was content to sit back and let them people wreak havoc in my life because I loved them so much and wanted them to be in my life so much. But I had to start. They don't love me enough to change any type of behaviors. Why don't I love me enough to distance myself from these behaviors that ultimately are going to hurt me? And it wasn't like, well, maybe I knew what they were. I knew they were going to hurt me. And so
you had to choose you in that moment.
I had to. And so I got down on my knees and I prayed and prayed and prayed. I still get on my knees and pray. That is my Sunday morning ritual. It's not even just Sundays, but I ended up joining the church that the pastor my brother sent me. I ended up joining that church. And so there's an online component for people who don't live in the city anymore. And so I log in, and Sunday morning I log in. Wednesday night I log in and listen. Whenever I'm in Milwaukee, I try to schedule my trip around time so I can go to church. Any given moment where I'm having I'm having one of them days, I will log in and find one of his old sermons and listen to it. And that is my way of getting through it. It's just because God don't make no mistakes. And I know that he's not going to just cause me pain for the sake of causing me pain. There's something I'm supposed to learn. There's some type of growth that's supposed to happen out of this. So even though it's uncomfortable, even though I don't like it, even though some stuff I'm like, okay, this is quite enough. Can we stop this now?
Yeah.
But I just I just sit through it and try to find the purpose in the pain, and then hope that one day that pain I can help somebody else.
And so what was the lesson that you feel like you learned through the storm that you had to go through and heal from? What was that lesson?
That I'm stronger than I think I am. And to stop underestimating myself, taking on the emotions of other people, taking on the thought processes of other people, taking on other people's baggage and mess that they carry. I thought about it one day, and it was, now this wasn't like the epiphany moment. I was like, you carry your trauma around like a sack of rocks over your shoulder, and you drag it around with you, and it affects any and everything you touch, everything you do. And is anything going well? No. So why don't you put that bag of rocks down and find a new way? I think that was my aha moment. And so whenever I get ready to pick up that bag of rocks again, I have to stop and focus and center myself and leave them rocks over there. That's the past.
Yes.
You can't change it. You can't fix it. You've learned from it. Don't pick it back up again and keep going forward.
Let's go back a little bit to where we were talking about the anger, because I just want to highlight this point too, because you talked about, going to the doctor and her saying you're in severe depression. You were walking around with anger, not necessarily knowing that it's depression. I said this in one of my previous episodes, is that a lot of times people don't really correlate anger with depression. But it's definitely there. And a lot of times when we're not used to identifying with all the other emotions that we have, anger is kind of like the go-to that we have. And so that's what is shown a lot, is the anger. And so with that, would you say that that was true for you with the anger and the depression, or you feel like maybe it was something else?
I think the anger caused my depression because there was so much I was mad at. And a lot of it was circumstantial. I was very unhappy when I was in Milwaukee. I never felt like even though I was born there, I never felt like I belonged there. I never felt like that this was supposed to be like the end stop for me and this is where I was supposed to be, but I didn't know how to get out. And so it manifested itself as just being mad all the time. And then there were circumstances going on where I felt like I wanted to isolate and like go, leave me alone. Let me be over here. Y'all go over there. Don't meddle in my stuff. Leave me, like, don't try to get in my, and people who I think were well-meaning trying to help. But the more they kept trying to, I'm trying to shove this door closed and they keep trying to get their foot in, pushing the door open. And that was making me angry. And I think just because it went on for as long as it did, it turned into a depression. And I talked to my mom about this now. And I told her, told her that I said, I think that is, you probably had trauma that you didn't even realize was trauma. And who knows how many generations as far as back as it goes. But because we weren't taught how to cope with it. We weren't taught how to deal with it. Like literally, I usually would my friends would crack jokes and they'd be like, you literally run from either totally disengaged from it or you mad as hell about it. That's that was my range of emotions. There was no middle ground. And so, and I think that a lot of it, I tell my mom all the time, I think it's generational. I think because y'all didn't know how to cope with y'all stuff, y'all passed this on and then now we took it and we passed it on. Somebody has to make it stop. Somebody has to stop that pattern and break that curse. And we have to learn how to deal with things in an emotionally intelligent way. And that's where I'm at in this point in life, is trying to deal with things in an emotionally intelligent way.
We pass down trauma, we pass down silence like it's a family heirloom. And we can't keep doing that. Do you feel that you have broken that cycle, or where do you feel like you're at with that?
I feel like I'm in the process. I wouldn't say it's totally broken. I feel like I'm in the
Yeah.
process of breaking it. I
Mhm.
think because I woke up today and it's like, oh, I'm enlightened, and everybody
Mhm.
is not on that same page with me. And I
Yeah.
can't shove that down other people's throat if that's not where they're
Mhm.
at, if that's not where their journey
Yeah.
has taken them at this point. Only thing I can
Mhm.
do is do what feels honest and authentic to me. It definitely, I'm not gonna lie, it makes me a little sad sometimes seeing people who I love and care about, and I just be like, and because you see it, I've done it, I've been there, and if you would just be honest about, but you got to let
Mhm.
people move into it when they're ready, and
Yeah.
if they're not ready, nothing I say is gonna make a difference. So there are times I feel like it's going to take time. And
Mhm.
because every day is not a great day for me. Like there are some days where I'm
Mhm.
like, I'm mad. But the one thing am proud of is that I have not reverted back to those really unhealthy coping mechanisms. I've found new ones, circumstance, honestly. Like what you were saying about Wisconsin, Wisconsin is, we love to eat, drink, and be merry in Wisconsin. And
Yes.
so it was kind of easy to have really unhealthy coping mechanisms. But here it's warm, like 10 months
Mhm.
out of the year. So I
Yes.
can get outside and I can go work out. So what the old me would have been mad, upset about something or whatever, and would have went
Mhm.
to and bought the supersized bottle of wine and posted
Mhm.
up in front of the TV for the night. I got a punching bag in my gym, and I work out until I'm exhausted. And then I go to
Mhm.
bed and wake up and try to start a new day on a better note. Um,
Love it.
so just finding those healthier coping mechanisms, finding things that and I think as you get older, I think not just me, I think as you get older, you grow and you change. And what worked for you, I mean, if you can't stay in what worked, 20-year-old me could have, drank all night and got up at 5 o'clock in the morning and went to work. Almost
Mhm.
50-year-old me, if I drank all night, I wouldn't go to work for a week. So you just can't do it.
Right.
So I had to find healthier coping mechanisms and different ways and more productive ways of processing the things that hurt me versus
Yes.
just feeling like this victim who had no control over anything and I just have to sit here and deal with it. I don't. If I do,
Yeah.
and even if I do, that's still my choice. So
Mhm.
nobody's making me do anything.
Do you ever find yourself going back to that mindset?
Sometimes, the stuff happens and you feel like, "Ugh, everybody's against me and but it doesn't, it's very short lived when I have those thoughts.
Mhm.
And sometimes it might just literally be like, okay, this is how I feel right now. I'm gonna go sit on this couch and pout for about 30 minutes and then
Mhm.
we're gonna go do something different. And
Wow.
one of my good friends, one of the things she used to say all the time, and I literally like live by it, is she would tell me, "You got 24 hours for the pity party, and then we gonna get up and we gonna go try something different." So I don't even give
Mm.
myself 24 hours anymore. Like
Yes.
I give you a solid 2 hours, and then come on.
Yes, and I love that. Yes, I think that's so important because a lot of times we either try to suppress those emotions or we try to just kind of act like they don't exist, or we want to do something quickly to get over it
Mhm,
and not feel it. And so I love the fact that you sit with those feelings, you acknowledge them, but then you give yourself permission to move forward and find something healthy to then help you cope with it.
mhm,
But it's okay to feel those emotions. We're human. That's okay to to feel that. So I'm happy that you said that because I feel like a lot of people I feel like a lot of us need to hear that it's okay to feel those uncomfortable feelings and to
mhm.
sit with it.
Absolutely. And have you ever been around somebody who won't sit with those feelings? They are some of the most dysfunctional people you have ever been around. So, yeah, no, if I got to feel it, I'm going to feel it. I'm not going to pretend like I
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah, and it does nothing for you. It doesn't do anything for you. And
Mm-mm.
so it's good to sit with those feelings, to feel them, to acknowledge them, And then, then you can move on
Mhm.
from there. It's nothing wrong with that.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. So I
Yeah.
just one foot in front of the other.
So I'm curious to know, how are you able to grow your coping skills? How are you able to do that? Because, I hear from a lot of people who aren't able to identify the thing that, is helpful to them, or that helps them feel at peace, that helps them feel grounded. How are you able to discover that, and how are you able to tap into that and grow your coping skills?
I had to try different things, and I had to try different things at different times, because
Mm-hmm.
what might have worked in the beginning, 6 months, 9 months down the road, this really wasn't helping me anymore. And I got to find something
Mm-hmm.
different. So the first thing I did was I went out and bought a whole bunch of self-help books. And, well, actually, no, my cousin, bought me a book when life just went haywire and I really felt like my life had got snatched out from underneath me. My
Mm-hmm.
cousin, who is a therapist, bought me a book called, and I'm probably getting the title wrong, but it's like Seeing Beautiful Again, and that you will see beautiful again. And so I read this book, and I read this book, and I read this book. That helped me get through like that first 3-6 months. But
Mhm.
then I was like, okay, I'm better, but I'm not great. I need something else. So then I was at Barnes and Nobles buying every self-help book that I could find on the shelf, trying to figure out what, because I was lost at that point. I didn't know what to do. I was like, I'm down here in this city that I never intended on coming to, because I thought I was going to build a life with this person. And now that life has got snatched away from me. And what am I going to do? And where am I going to go? I have no idea. I just didn't know. And so I was reading the books and everything, and doing all of that. And then that worked for a little bit.
Mhm.
And then it stopped working. And so then then my brother sent me the link about church. And so I started listening to sermons, and that's when things started to really take a turn. And
Mhm.
then I have some friends who I knew from Milwaukee who live here, and I started hanging out and spending time with them. And they were like, "Girl, we're gonna get you out the house, because you're not just gonna sit in that house and be down and blue and especially and some of them who had been through something similar." And they were like,
Mhm.
"I know what you're going through." And they would call me on the humbug and be like, "Put some clothes on. We finna go to this whatever." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't want to go." And next thing I know, I see somebody pulling up in my driveway talking about, "You ain't got in the shower yet and got dressed? Come on, I'm waiting."
Yeah.
So it just took different things at different times to got to the point where, I started to be okay.
Mhm.
But I also had to be very in tune with, what do you need right now? Because I remember there was a period of time, um, like where I felt like, okay, I'm kind of over this, and I'm ready to move forward, and I'm doing okay and whatever. But
Mhm.
then I realized you are still really, really angry under the surface. Like I
Mm.
would run into people and have interactions with them and be perfectly nice and pleasant and everything. And as soon as I was away from them, I called them everything under my breath but the child of God. And I was like, you are
Mm.
still really angry at this person.
Yeah.
So I had to be in tune with, this is how you feel. And just because you can
Mhm.
be civil, that doesn't mean that you have to be fake and be smiling
Yeah.
and grinning. And if you don't want to talk to this person right now, you don't have to talk to this person right now.
Right.
If you don't feel like, you can be cordial and say, "Hey, how you doing?" And when they try to engage you in a conversation, you can divert that, and you can, okay, I got to go over here. I'll talk to you. So,
Mhm.
but I had to, it took, and I think that's the part that took a while, was to be aware of the feelings that I was feeling that were under the surface, that weren't
Mm.
present. Like I wasn't ready to, like when I saw this person, I wasn't ready to just go mad and scream on them for, whatever. I didn't feel like that, but it was under the surface. And so I
So
had to really,
how were you able to dig into that? Did it take therapy? Did it take time just, sitting alone with yourself? Was it your friends who helped you? How were you able to tap into that type of awareness?
um, it really just took me sitting alone with myself
Mhm.
and remembering what it felt like, the physically, what it felt like to carry all that anger around all the time. Like, I used to hurt. And I would tell people all the time, I was like, I left Wisconsin because it was cold. Like in the winter, like my bones would hurt, my skin hurt, a lot of that anger is what hurt, like physically was weighing me down and hurting my body. And I had to remember what that felt like and then sit with that. And then I even bought a book to help me work through that. It's like, it's a whole little journaling thing. I started journaling and working through it. I bought a book. It's called Forgiving What You Can't Forget. Ooh. And so I read that book like it's a required reading for me some days. Because, and I have to, and I know, and that is still I'm on that journey. That is still a struggle, is learning how to forgive people who are not sorry for what they did to you. But I can't, it's going to hurt me. It's going to literally make me sick if I walk around mad at this person all the time. So I had to learn how to let that go, not for them, but for me.
And how were you able to do that? And the reason why I'm asking that is because a lot of people have a difficult time with forgiveness, right? But when it comes to also forgiving someone who is not sorry or who isn't really, thinking about the actions or how they hurt you, that's another level. So how or what did you learn or how were you able to get to that point?
That wasn't nothing but my Bible.
Yeah.
And I can't quote scripture or nothing like that. I'm not that great in it, right? But I remember the one thing, the Bible verse that sticks in my head is God said, my plans are to prosper you and never harm you. And so this person might have harmed me, but God ain't gonna harm me. And you might have, and what this whole situation that I'm so upset about maybe was not to hurt me, what was to protect me, because he saw what was coming. And so let me pull her out of this now. And it's gonna hurt for a little bit, but I'm gonna give her something greater later. And that is literally how I walk through life.
What advice would you give someone who feels like they are really struggling with forgiveness or they're holding on to lots of anger, but haven't found religion yet and haven't found, God in their life yet? What advice would you give to them?
Get a good therapist. Because I go to therapy. And I know there used to be like a stigma and a shame, like, oh, we don't go to therapy. I go to church and I go to therapy.
I love that.
Get a good therapist, get a good friend who you can talk to. And I would say, if you ever get to the point where you can, and because I know everybody can't handle it, talk to the person who caused you all the pain and tell them this hurt me and this bothered me. They may be receptive to it, they may not, but if they don't have that where like they're ready to go, because I get it. Religion is not for everybody. Church is not for everybody. But I will always recommend find you a good therapist. And you might not find that one on the first try. You might have to go to a few therapists before you find one that really gets you. But when you find one that gets you, stick with them and talk. And that's my biggest thing, is to talk. Do not bottle things up. Don't hold them in, because that's when you start manifesting terrible, bad coping mechanisms and habits, when you keep stuff to yourself.
And so what did you identify with the most, or what did you like most about your therapist that helped build a solid relationship and foundation for you to continue therapy?
Some of it was initially is kind of fun. It was her facial expressions. When I would be telling her stuff and she would be looking at me like, you would see the blank face, and then you would, when you're talking to like a dog and they kind of cocking their head at you because they like, what are you talking about? She would be looking at me like that, like, are you serious? Like, do you hear yourself? And I was like, what? And then she would break down to me like, let me tell you what's faulty in what you just said. And let me tell you what's wrong in this. And not to say that how you feel is wrong, but I'm telling you how you're processing this is wrong.
Yeah.
And so she keeps it real. And there was at one point, there was somebody who, I was in a fury with. Like, I mean, couldn't stand this person. I was like, I would cross the street if I saw them on one side of the street. I couldn't stand them for nothing. And she said, and I was be in her office and just ranting and raving and carrying on. And she told me, she was like, that person is just a human being. What do you expect out of them? And I was like, huh, okay. let me take that back. She really just kind of took that high strung, you know, kind of attitude and stuff. And she brought it down to a more like realistic level for me. And she also kind of reminded me that everybody is not you. And she actually really helped me realize that a lot of what I was mad at was because I couldn't find a me. And she was just like, so you be your you. She's like, you looking for it in somebody else. You right there.
Yeah.
And that's what really made, like, the way she really just kept it, and she would call me out on my mess when I would be in there talking about some stuff, and she would be like, girl, bye. So that's what made me stick with her.
Oh man, that's awesome. And so, yes, and I like what you said too earlier, like you have to find a therapist that's the best fit for you, right? Because one therapist personality might not be a good fit for you. You might have to find the person who really clicks with you and helps you feel safe, but also challenges you to move on from the mindset or the unhealthy coping skills that you do have. So would you say your therapist was a part of changing your mindset?
Absolutely. Because she also was a cheerleader. When I would go and tell her, you know, like, hey, like this happened and I did not melt down and I did not fall apart and I did not go buy the supersized bottle of wine. And she would cheer, like she was my cheerleader. And she was like, good. And so, and it's not like I was looking for validation, but it's always nice to hear somebody say you are on the right path and keep doing what you're doing.
Yes, and it is so much power in that too, to just get that reinforcement. And also, it just points out the growth that you have too, because sometimes when you're in life and life is life, and sometimes it's so easy to go back to the negative mindset and the thoughts that you have. But the therapist being able to point out, like, okay, yes, this happened, but look at how you responded to this situation versus how you would have responded to that. And that's growth. So there's power in therapy.
It absolutely, and plus it helps when you have a family member that's a therapist, and I talked to her, and she would tell me all the time, okay, I'm talking to you as your cousin, not your therapist.
Yeah.
But she would still be giving me some good therapy. So
Yes.
absolutely.
One of the powerful things that you talked about too is you said that when you were really down and felt like you had hit rock bottom, you had your brother in your ear sending you sermons from his church. You had your friends who were pulling you out the house and saying, come on, let's do that. Speak about that and how much would you say that helped you? How beneficial was it for you to have that community behind you?
It was, I don't think I would have made it without them. Because even though I eventually, you know, found things to help me, they were like my kick in the pants to say, get up off this floor, stop crying, stop screaming, hollering, fussing, cussing, whatever. You are going to be okay. I think when my brother said the words to me, he was just like, this is not without a reason. There is purpose in this, and you're going to help somebody someday. You just got to get through this. I didn't believe him when he said it, but I absolutely believe him now. I don't think if it weren't for them, I probably wouldn't have made it. And I think one of the oh, I'm gonna go tear. One of the people that really helped was my dad, because he is not that real emotional type. You know, he not gonna call and, you know, whatever, but he would call just to check on me. And he would be like, you know, that was terrible. You didn't deserve this. And man, did you wrong? And he was like, I had this in my house and, you know, whatever. And, you know, that whole thing. But just hearing my dad say, I'm so sorry this happened to you. You didn't deserve that.
Yeah.
That made all the difference in the world, because, I expect it from my mom, I expect it from my
Yeah.
girlfriends, whatever, but to get it from my dad made all the
Yeah.
difference in the world. And so let me preface and say that, so this is my stepdad. This is not my biological dad.
Okay.
And so my stepdad, he came into my life and was a godsend. Like, and he came into my life late, and I was grown. Like, I think I was maybe in my 30s when he came into my life.
Mm-hmm.
And to have this man who, didn't, he knew my mom, but didn't know me, didn't know my daughter.
Yeah.
And he came into our family and he chose to love us.
Mm.
Made all the difference in the world.
Beautiful.
So
Beautiful.
yeah. So yeah. Hey, baby.
Yeah. Shout out to David, because that is a blessing for him to be in your life. And for him to, like you said, choose to be there and choose to love you
Yeah. And he is funny.
unconditionally.
He is hilarious. So
Yeah.
even there were been days where I'll be on the phone sounding like, moping around. And he is hilarious. He used to be a truck driver, and listen to his
Mhm.
stories about, yeah, this so-and-so couldn't drive and hitting, almost took the bridge out. And he is, just hilarious. So there were days where I would literally call and be on the phone with him about to break down and crying. And the next thing I am crying, but I'm crying because I'm laughing. So he has been the biggest blessing in my life.
There is power in laughter. And research shows like how therapeutic laughing is, and how beneficial it is,
Mm-hmm.
to us
Mm-hmm.
when we're laughing.
Oh, yeah.
So it's great that you have someone like David in your life to be that person for you, and to also tap in emotionally when you need it as well.
Oh, yeah. And we can laugh at anything. Like, we sit up there and we watch TV shows and we'll be laughing. And my mom would come in there like, what's so funny? And she didn't understand what we was laughing at. And we would be practically on the floor. So,
Yeah,
yeah. Laughter
awesome.
is truly the best medicine. And I think
Yes.
that, and he actually is the one, he taught me that things are going to happen. Like,
Hmm.
life is going to life. Things are going to happen. He really taught me how to go through life and be unbothered. And when I say by
Hmm.
be unbothered, what I mean is, like, don't let nothing break you. You be
Mm.
unbothered to the point where this is not consuming you and consuming your life and knocking you off your square so far that
Hmm.
you are just way out here, just, in never land. He taught me that. And so
Hmm.
I've grown woman, but you can still learn lessons.
Yes, we can. I feel like as long as we are alive, we can learn.
Exactly. I
Yes,
totally agree with that. Yes.
yes. And you see the most, there's wisdom in that as well. You can always learn. And I feel like those are the people who are able to be the most resilient, and to be able to learn from whatever life throws at them,
Hmm.
and turn it into something wonderful and beautiful, whether that's changing your mindset,
Hmm.
or it being a lesson learned that helps you grow into a new, better version of you.
Hmm. Yep.
Yes. If you could write a letter, to your 20-year-old self, or to your younger self,
Hmm.
or if you could give them a word of advice,
Hmm.
what would that be from you? What advice would you give the younger version of yourself who was identifying as a victim, who didn't have the healthiest mindset, who did not have the healthiest coping skills? What advice would you give to that version of you?
I would tell her to calm down, and I would tell her to learn how to protect her peace. I recently learned that. I would hear people say it, and it was like a buzzword, a catchword, a cliche to me. I've heard people use that, I protect my peace, but then I see how they live, and I'm like, you don't protect your peace. You just avoid everything and call it protecting your peace. I would tell her, learn how to genuinely protect your peace. And that means you got to fall back from somebody for a while. That don't mean you got to be forever. You might be able to come back to them later. But overall, I think I would tell her, calm down, because you cannot live life way up here and it not start to take its toll on you. So that's what I would tell her.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, Danielle, it has been such a pleasure speaking with you today. Is there anything that you would like to share with our audience, or anything else that maybe we didn't get a chance to talk about today?
The only thing I would probably share is just that, find what everybody's different. You find what sits well with your spirit, whether it's church, whether it's a group of friends, whether it's you might have to read some self-help books, whatever it is, but find what sits with your spirit, but don't stay there, because we all grow, we all change, we all evolve. What works today might not work for you tomorrow. So you have to be in tune with when something is no longer working for you, and then find something new. And find whether it be an activity. I think I found all the things. I found the books, the friends, the activities, the everything. But find what sits well with your spirit, and that where you can go to bed every night and not toss and turn because you got all this anxiety and you got all this stress. You find what works for you, because it's not a cookie cutter for everybody.
That's right. Well said. I love that. All right. Well, thank you so much, Danielle.
Appreciate
This has
you,
been a
Kathy.
pleasure. I'm so grateful that you decided to come on this podcast and share your story. Thank you for trusting us with your story.
Thank you for having me.
If this episode was a reminder that you're human too, please like, subscribe, and come back for more. We're everywhere you get your podcasts, and we're on YouTube as well. If you want to get naked with us in a future episode, go to nakedinsane.com. I'm also extending the invitation for you to follow us on Instagram. That's it for now. Remember, vulnerability looks good on you. So let's keep getting naked and stay sane. We'll see you soon. Bye.